The 198th edition of the Roy's Boys podcast starts right now.
Carolina basketball family is the strongest there's ever been. There ever will be.
Nate Humphrey hands King Rice the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma. Been ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. With 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63, 62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Brent Brown looking. Throw away to Worthy. 35. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul. Brown gets it into Williams. Comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebound. It's over. And how about the Tar Heels? They are the national champions. The Tar Heels are the national dadgum champions.
And that's what it takes when we big time games. You got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart, too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe. Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Don't got a lot to say positively about tonight's episode as Carolina's NCAA Tournament experience and their 2020-21 season comes to a close in a 85-62 loss to Wisconsin in the round of 64 as Carolina made a lot of history in the way that you never want to make history at this time of year. I think we entered this tournament thinking this team was playing its best basketball of the season. There was a lot of optimism around Carolina fans, around the national media about this team's ability to make some noise in the NCAA tournament with a backcourt that had been to this point getting better and the nation's best front court. But as been the theme with this team since the very first game back in the season against College of Charleston, we have come to expect the unexpected, and we got the bad version of Carolina, a team that didn't show up, wasn't ready to play from the word go, and it ultimately cost them tonight's game and ends their season a little shorter than we wanted it to.
I think it was just very obvious that the fact that people thought this was a bad matchup for Carolina, they were spot on. I think this team definitely controlled the tempo of the game. Wisconsin did. But I don't think they played as slow as we thought they were going to play. This was not a game where Carolina was dominated by a defense that just shut them down. They took poor shots for the majority of the first half. They didn't put the ball inside as much as they should have, despite guys very clearly open in the post, and your young guards just missing them. And, another part of it was that I think Carolina just ran into a team that was playing their best basketball of the season in that game. They will not play another game like that in 5 years. I don't see them playing a game where they hit literally everything. And even if there were moments where it may have seemed like they weren't knocking down shots, that team at one point at the under 8 timeout when they showed the stats, that Wisconsin team was shooting 8 of 23 from the field. So they weren't lighting it up. But they started the second half 11 of 15 from the field. And that was when Carolina was able to put together their run on the offensive end. And Wisconsin, every time they had to match Carolina with a basket, they found a way to do it. And that was just the difference in this game. And I think, you can look at it as this is a veteran team. That's part of the reason why. I think it's more that this was just their night and Carolina just ran into the wrong team at the wrong time.
Yeah, the second half really felt like that loss back in 2019 against Auburn, where Auburn made everything they threw up at the rim. There was plenty of time where Carolina was in the right position. They closed out hard. They put a hand up. And Wisconsin was tough enough to take and then eventually make those shots. I do think experience was a big part of this because Wisconsin didn't fold in the second half when Carolina came out like they have all year long in the second half, and they punched back. And they needed to do that after trailing by 16 at halftime, the largest halftime deficit by the Tar Heels since the 2008 Final Four loss to Kansas.
Dear God.
Carolina scored 13 points in the first 5 minutes. They scored 24 in the whole first half, and the deficit didn't get decreased. It remained the same. In the other games this year where Carolina has punched back, you look at the games against Florida State, the Virginia Tech game in the ACC tournament, those teams didn't necessarily fold, but Carolina was able to withstand that momentum, carried it on for a full 20 minutes, and eventually win the ball game. That didn't happen tonight. The closest Carolina got it was 12. They got the game down to, I think it was 58-46. You made Wisconsin settle for an outside shot. That ball hits every part of the rim, then shoots back up off the iron and back through the net to make a 12-point deficit, a 15-point deficit once again. And I think once that shot kind of went in the way that it went in, you just had to look at yourselves. We, of course, were hanging out watching the game. You knew it just wasn't Carolina's night. And Roy Williams says that usually when this team loses in the NCAA tournament, he's never felt more hopeless in that particular moment. I've got to imagine that's how he felt in this game because, by God, they tried in the second half. They pressed. They trapped. They got Wisconsin running up and down the court a lot more frequently than they wanted to. They just simply made shots. And a lot of that was experience. A lot of that was toughness. And I saw a lot of Tar Heel fans put this on Twitter. And I think it's got to be very true. For Carolina's front court to be as physical as it is, and it's a very physical front court, they don't handle well when a team gets physical with them. And Wisconsin played 20 games in the Big Ten, which is, in my opinion, is the toughest conference in college basketball this season. So they weren't afraid by the physicality of Carolina's front court. And it just appeared that the guys in the first half, including Armando Bacot, they were shell-shocked by Wisconsin's ability to play just as equally, if not more physical than Carolina. In the second half, I think Armando Bacot got a message from Roy Williams at halftime and took it to heart, and he did everything a big man can do to try to will his team back into the game. But you could definitely tell, as much as the backcourt was inexperienced, Carolina's front court with Walker Kessler, Day'Ron Sharp, those guys weren't as effective tonight. And for Garrison Brooks to be a fourth-year senior, he even seemed shell-shocked, only 4 of 12 from the field. So it was everything that could have went wrong for Carolina went wrong. And as you said, it was just Wisconsin's night.
I don't think that Garrison was shell-shocked. I think it was more the fact that he just took some really questionable shots early in the game that really got him in a bad rhythm out of the gate. There were a couple of shots that you probably won't see Garrison Brooks ever throw up again. But for some reason, he felt that he needed to put those shots up. I think one of the things early on was maybe because of how much it was hammered into their head through some of the talking heads, including ourselves, that you needed to control the pace in this game. That was one of the main reasons why they were trying to speed things up even in the half court, trying to get quick shots, stuff like that. When we talk about controlling the pace, that means getting out on the fast break. That means, driving to the basket with your point guard quickly in a possession. Not getting a post touch and throwing up a turnaround jump shot from the free throw line. That's not going to work out very well most of the time. But I think that, it's confusing to look at the bigs and try to figure out what happened in that first half. Was it more on the guards not getting them the ball, or the fact that they weren't being aggressive? I think it was more of the prior. I really think that the guards were not able to get them the ball as much as they should have. There were plenty of times in that first half where we saw Armando with good post position, Day'Ron with good post position, and the guards simply did not get the ball inside to them. They decided to hold on to it. It got late into the shot clock, and they ended up taking a bad shot multiple times. So that's where I think it's more frustrating. Yes, Armando Bacot didn't have a great night overall until the start of that second half. Day'Ron Sharpe didn't play his best game. But at the same time, when those post touches were there and you just seem to refuse to get the ball inside, it just doesn't make sense. And I think that was something that we looked at in that game against Florida State and passed off and said, you know what, maybe they were just a little fatigued. Maybe they'll be able to bounce back in the NCAA tournament and start realizing that, again, you have to run through the post. But I just don't feel like that was the case in this game tonight.
Yeah, I do think, and we'll talk about this more when we recap the season and get ready for next year. That's the evolution of not just the backcourt. The post players, when they get the ball in that situation and then they get denied the ball, they've got to become more demanding. And they're
you can only demand it so much.
They're just not there yet, which is fine because outside of Garrison Brooks, they're all young.
They made it pretty obvious, though, tonight. Like, there were a couple of times in that first half where Armando, Garrison, and Day'Ron, all three of them, mainly Day'Ron and Garrison, were, pretty blatant in trying to show the guards that they were in a good enough position to get the ball. I don't really know what else.
Well, when I say when demanding, it's not, you got position and you put your hand up. If you've got that good a position and you feel like you can get the ball and do something with it, demand it. And I mean, you call for the ball. And if they don't give it to you, when you get a timeout or you get a stoppage in play, you let that guy know, I got position, give me the ball.
Because and that could have happened. We just don't see.
Because when Carolina has that, and they've had it with Sean May, Tyler Hansborough, Tyler Zeller, John Henson, Bryce Johnson in 2016 was very demonstrative, telling the guards, give me the ball. And then in 2017 with Luke May, or not Luke May, but Kennedy Meeks and those guys.
Isaiah Hicks, and then eventually Luke, yeah.
The message was received better. The coaches can tell you all day long to put the ball inside. But when your teammate, a guy that you've lived with the whole entire year this year because you've been in a bubble, if that guy's in your ear telling you to give me the ball, you're probably more reluctant to give them the ball. But that's twofold. That's on the guards, but that's on our guys not being vocal enough to demand it.
With Armando and Day'Ron, you kind of wonder if maybe because they're younger, they don't understand that it is okay to say those types of things. I feel like, when you're younger on these types of teams, you don't want to step on that many toes, create what you may think will be problems within the team if you bring that up, when really it's not a problem. You're right. That's something that if it's there in a huddle, yes, it needs to be pointed out by not only the coaches but the players.
Carolina's culture is tough enough, is good enough to overcome those if it becomes a minor misunderstanding. But a lot of it was Wisconsin. Wisconsin was able to get Carolina off the block, and I think that's something that we didn't. There was times Carolina got great position, and we missed them.
Yeah, that team was much tougher inside.
Wisconsin was able to move Carolina off the block, and that was something that I didn't think they expected coming into the game. And I know us as Tar Heel fans didn't expect that to happen entering tonight's game as well.